Dominik, if you want to start with a brief background, that would be great.
Yeah, for sure. So, how much do you actually know about Iota itself and the foundation?
Well, I have to admit, Iota was one of the first cryptocurrencies that really caught my interest back when I started writing about cryptocurrency. So I know quite a bit about it, but can you give some more information just for our readership who may not know?
Sure. Like I'll give you a brief background on where Iota actually comes from. So,
yeah, perfect.
So the origin story of Iota starts in 2015. When we simply realized that all of the blockchain architectures that are out there today cannot run in this IoT environment because they have serious scalability issues, transaction fees, and there's some major bottlenecks also when it comes to integrating the software into the hardware itself. And so what we then did is we basically went on this quest to reinvent the distributed ledger. And what we came up with is the Tangle. And so the Tangle is kind of like this further improvement of the blockchain. It's no longer the sequential chain, but it's kind of this multi-dimensional mesh, if we can call it. Like one transaction references two past transactions in history, and from there you get this graph. Right. And the beautiful thing is that we have a very different way to achieve consensus, which also means that because of this different way of achieving consensus, Iota is much more scalable. So the way that Iota basically works is, like I said before, network participants that execute a transaction also validate and verify transactions. So if you are a network participant in Iota, you're automatically also participating in the consensus, which means that you're helping to secure the network. And so as such in Iota, really the network brings the security. It's not just the miners, the smaller subset, but the entirety of the network. And because of that, it's really well fit for IoT. For one, it's because it's scalable, and for another, because there's no transaction fees, right? So now one machine can pay another machine without any fees. And so that's just kind of Iota. And so we did our small ICO where we raised like $500,000 back in 2015. And with that, we've built up the entire project, which is now like $11-12 billion. And so November last year, we finally registered the Iota Foundation. And so the purpose of the foundation is to obviously to further develop and research stuff around Iota, because obviously the Iota and the Tangle concept itself is not finalized. There's still a lot more research to do to really make it production ready. And the foundation is there to kind of cross this chasm from this initial proof of concept to a production ready product. And most importantly also, which is also obviously why we're talking today, is that the Iota Foundation is there to work with the ecosystem, to foster the ecosystem and to partner up with strategic partners. Like a few weeks ago, we launched a data marketplace, which now has more than 40 participants all around the globe who are really like there to participate in this innovation exercise. And yesterday we announced the ITIC announcement, where we are now focusing on the future of mobility, basically.
Right. Yeah.
And so should I tell more about the ITIC stuff, or do you have some specific questions?
I'd love to hear more about ITIC, but before then, can you explain how the Tangle is just as decentralized as a regular blockchain is? Of course. So there's two sides of this story. First, so let me start with where we are right now. So where we are right now, if you've also seen the Iota white paper, the main assumption of the Iota network is that it's large enough to be self-sustainable. What this means now is that in this infancy stage, where the network is still growing and more participants are joining, the network is susceptible to certain attacks, which is why right now we require this coordinator. And the coordinator is basically there to help the network to figure out which transactions are valid and which transactions are not valid. So it's still decentralized, everyone is still validating, but there's this special node which basically acts as the training wheels, enable a network to grow, to protect it against double spend attacks. And what we're doing right now is we're starting to gradually turn off the coordinator, so the network becomes self-sustainable. Wow.
But so the way that it works then in the future is obviously that once the coordinator is completely shut off, it's a completely decentralized network with a lot of mesh networks. So there's a lot of different mesh networks that are interconnected, each having their own kind of Tangle version. And there's this interoperability between them. And through that, we want to really achieve this dynamic scaling of the network.
Okay, so can you tell me now a little bit more about this collaboration with ITIC?
Yeah, of course. So with ITIC, perhaps some background story. Obviously, our main focus with Iota is it to work on the Internet of Things, and mobility and the vehicle itself is obviously the biggest Internet of Things platform out there.
Yes.
Which is why mobility for us is a very strategic area where we are now starting to announce a lot more partnerships as well with some of the OEMs. And the ITIC is a non-profit foundation like Iota, just that they're based in the United States. And what they focus on is really to build out open and private test beds for autonomous vehicles. And so the partnership now with Iota and ITC is, for one, focused on further accelerating the growth of these test beds so that we also help in setting this up internationally and help fund it. For one, we are facilitating this by the Iota Foundation joining the ITRC Alliance and being one of the key driving members. And for another, the ITRC and the Iota Foundation are going to collaborate on the Smart Mobility Fund. Just so you know, the Smart Mobility Fund is something that we are going to announce in more detail later on. Right now, we're just a bit teasing it. But basically, the Iota Foundation has this ecosystem fund, which now accounts for nearly $100 million.
Oh, wow, okay.
And part of that money is what we are then going to use for basically making it possible for the ecosystem, the broader ecosystem, to also participate in these test beds. By coming up with new applications, us having fund those applications, and then running the applications in the test beds. So it's really this open innovation platform as well. The main focus here is not just on for-profit startups, right, where we can have a return on investment, but it's really also about infrastructure projects. Because there's still so much infrastructure to develop for autonomous vehicles to even take off, right? And also a lot of open source, especially when it comes to security, because security is just scary. Just fun.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the first part about the ITSC collaboration. The second part is basically us working together with the ITSC and with some of the partners that are working already there on basically new applications and new business models. So it's kind of this exploration on figuring out what works and what doesn't. So we are basically integrating Iota into those test beds and then start testing out certain hypotheses that we have. One of the first examples is the data marketplace.
Yes.
So the interesting thing about those test beds is that they're globally. So it's not just one test bed, but they're globally distributed. And what we can now enable is we can share data from one test bed to another test bed. And sometimes those test beds are operated by government or by for-profit entity, which now means that if a company like BMW wants to drive in a test bed, they don't necessarily want to share all of the data. They only want to share specific data sets with the other parties, right? It's still a kind of competition, but it also it kind of opens up these companies to more collaboration, because what they can do now with Iota is they can start selling the data that they accumulate during their test drives.
Right, yeah,
and through
exactly.
that, the data marketplace is basically a huge enabler for these new mobility applications.
Okay, so the ITIC collaboration will work with the data marketplace then?
Yeah, what we're doing then with ITIC is that we're then also showcasing some concrete use cases on where data marketplace and mobility makes a lot of sense, because it's just such a huge area, right? And on how much data the car is collecting constantly and how to sell it.
Yes.
And we hope to publish that also by February or March. So that will also be like a short report.
Okay, great. And then also I saw, I think in the press release, that we'll start seeing some live demonstrations this year as well.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll host a joint event that has yet to be determined. Okay. But in this joint event, we basically want to showcase how Iota and this data marketplace in those test beds works in real time.
Then, along with the data marketplace, there was a little bit of controversy about the nature of the relationship with Microsoft. I know that it was, can you just go in a little more in depth about that?
Of course.
Yeah, thank you.
So this is always fun to tell, right?
No, of course, yeah, I'm sure.
No, of course. So basically what happened there is that there was several that happened. And the major that happened was on the Microsoft side. It was not on the Iota side.
Yes.
Because what we've communicated clearly in our press release and in all of our public communications, that the companies that are participating in the data marketplace are nothing more than data marketplace participants. We never said they were partners.
Right.
And one of the quotes from the Microsoft employees, Omkar, was basically saying we are happy to partner with the Iota Foundation.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And what happened then is basically the journalists started picking this up. Iota partners with Microsoft on data marketplace. So for one, obviously, all of the 34 other companies were displaced, right? Because suddenly it was mostly about Microsoft. Mm-hmm. But for another, it also got a lot of confusion inside Microsoft internally, and so then it was just us being the scapegoat of this entire controversy. But we just basically then issued the thing is we issued corrections immediately after those things were public. But yeah, we'll move on from that.
Iota is currently available on I think about around a dozen exchanges. Is that right? Are there any more plans to introduce Iota onto new exchanges in 2018?
Yeah. You know, the main bottleneck is not us, it's the exchanges themselves. Mm-hmm. Basically, when it comes to our collaborations or with our intentions to list more, it's definitely coming.
But that is part of the plan. There's just some legal and logistical things that need to
exactly. To be totally frank with you, exchanges is definitely on top priority.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because it's also one of the major bottlenecks right now.
Right, and then also I'm wondering if there's any plans to integrate Iota or to make I know there's the Iota native wallet. Users who have not as much technical know-how might not really be able to know how to use it. Is there more plans to?
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that is already in beta testing right now.
Oh, great.
I can send you a link afterwards, but that is the UCL wallet. So that is something that we've been developing for the last 6 months, and it's a lot more user-friendly, a lot more performant. Mm-hmm. You know, the ironic thing is that a year ago, I basically said I don't want to have the Iota Foundation develop wallets because we should focus on protocols, and so that's why we were a bit negligent to the wallet itself. But now we also employ all of those people that developed the UCL wallet. So now we are back to doing wallet development under the foundation. But it's worth it, right? I definitely, the good thing about that wallet is that it's also on iOS, Android, and on desktop.
Yeah, that's really exciting.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the best wallets out there then.
Okay, and then I guess this is kind of going backwards, a little bit in our conversation, but I guess I'm wondering, can you explain to our readership, exactly, Iota tokens will they, be in your washing machine? How exactly will Iota, what will it take for Iota to be really, truly integrated into the Internet of Things in our homes?
Yeah, of course. So there's two major distinctions here that we need to think of. Mm-hmm. So the first one is the protocol itself. We need to start integrating the protocol into the machines. Mm-hmm. And what we're doing there already now is that we're starting up these partnerships with some of the standards bodies to really work on the standardization of the Iota protocol itself. Because that's obviously very important. So, because obviously the Internet of Things is that we have machines out there in the wild that run for 10, 20 years, meaning that oftentimes you can't even run an upgrade. Yes. So having a standardized protocol is incredibly important to ensure that it actually works continuously. But more difficult than that is really figuring out how to provide this utility for the token itself, so that the machines trade tokens instead of trading fiat. Right. Mm-hmm. And because a good example is Ripple. Even though Ripple has $130 billion market cap right now, nobody's using Ripple. None of the banks are using Ripple, right? So there's this huge controversy around that. And what we want to aim at, or what we are aiming at with Iota, is that we really want to make it possible for machines to use the token. The way that we're achieving that is that we're right now starting to set up this kind of financial infrastructure around Iota, so that in this intermediary stage, that machines will still have a fiat wallet, but they're able to exchange this fiat balance immediately into Iota tokens. And then the machine utilize the token to transfer between each other. Right, yeah. And the thing is, obviously, the biggest bottleneck right now is the volatility. Because you don't want to have an Iota wallet in your car. Today you have 10 euros, tomorrow you have 15, suddenly you have 5, right? Yes. So it's just insane. And so, which is why right now we want Iota to be mainly focused on this transactional settlement, not pure store of value, right? But it will gradually evolve into being this store of value for machines as well. So then think about a machine receiving a transaction, being able to say, hey, 90% of the tokens that I receive, I'm going to sell immediately into euros, and 10% I'm going to keep because I'm long on Iota or something. So that's what we are working on right now, and that's why we also starting to work more and more with banks.
More and more with banks.
Yeah, so banks are very important for our equation, right? Mm-hmm. In my opinion, banks in the future, they will or also Visa or MasterCard, they will no longer do the transactional settlement. They're only there for the onboarding and offboarding, basically getting into this economy and getting out of it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So speaking of volatility, there was a big surge in the price of Iota recently following the price of following the announcement of the data marketplace.
Yep.
And it's since corrected just a little bit, still a pretty impressive gain. Where do you see the price of Iota headed in the next 6 months? Or do you have an opinion about that?
I always hate to answer these questions.
I know.
Because quite frankly, always what I say is like, I know what's going to happen. Right?
Yeah.
Because even now the crypto market is valued at 600, 700 billion or even more.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Nobody ever expected that. And,
right.
and so when it comes to Iota, I always say that there's like this Iota has the potential to really be the backbone of this machine economy, mm-hmm. which truly means that a $1 trillion market cap makes a lot of sense for Iota. Mm-hmm. But in my opinion, over the next year, we will definitely see some major consolidation of the projects that are actually legitimate and actually delivering. And so in my opinion, Iota is definitely one of the top 3 by the end of the year, 2018.
Great. Okay.
Oh, I have to do another bet on that.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, this is actually a funny story. Mm-hmm. Because the last time I did a bet with someone in the community.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I basically said that if Iota is at $10 billion by the end of the year, mm-hmm. that I will get him a tattoo. Like I can tattoo him.
You with the Iota ticker symbol,
yeah,
or
exactly. He's going to get a tattoo now.
So what happens? What happens if you lose then?
Yes. So if I lose, I would have to go naked skiing. But luckily, I won, right?
Of course not. But yesterday, it kind of came out that some of the founders of Ripple have now been made into these like super, super wealthy people, like basically overnight. So I'm curious what your stake is in this, or what the founders of Iota. Do you have a big piece of the pie, or what's going on with that?
Yeah, so this is actually one of the major distinctions of Iota versus all of the other projects, right? Mm-hmm. So what Ripple did and what Ethereum or those other projects did is that they pre-allocated a mm-hmm. portion of the tokens for themselves. So that is why the Ripple fund got like 35%, which in my opinion is just insane.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot.
or Ripple or Ethereum got 17%. Mm-hmm. And what we did with Iota during our token generation event is that we issued 100% of the tokens. So us founders, we had to buy into the ICO as well, just to get tokens, just to get a stake in the project. Mm-hmm. And it's the same with the Iota Foundation. So what we did with the Iota Foundation is we came to the community and said, hey, look, if you want to get a foundation, a non-profit entity that is behind the protocol and is pushing it, you need to donate tokens. Mm-hmm. And that is why when the community came together, they donated tokens, about 5% of the total supply. Mm-hmm. And that is how the Iota Foundation is funded right now. Okay. And we ourselves also had to buy in, right? So... Mm-hmm. So, in my opinion, Iota is probably one of has one of the fairest distributions out there. Because us as founders, that is also one of the main reasons, in my opinion, why Robert Bosch Venture Capital decided to invest in Iota tokens. Yes. Because they realized that because obviously those huge companies have a lot of weight behind their brand, mm-hmm. and then buying tokens and then it increasing and making the founders billionaires leaves everyone with this sour taste in their mouth, right? Mm-hmm. It's just like, hey, this is just a pump and dump scheme. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And yeah. But that's why Iota is better than other projects in that regard. But obviously, the short answer is I have enough incentive to work on this 24/7, no life. Yeah.
Definitely. Okay. Well, Dominik, thank you so much for your time today. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, likewise, for sure.